conducting this hearing today. Also on the panel with me is Judge Kenneth Gass to my left and Judge Jeffrey Anjija to my right. Before we go on the record and officially start this proceeding, I just have some housekeeping issues I'd like to go over with everyone. And I'd also like to say thank you for coming, making the journey down here. I know it was not easy today with all the closures and the traffic, so I appreciate that. The first thing I'd like to go over before we go on the record is the exhibits for this hearing. It was a little confusing because we were not able to convert some of the audit work papers, which were in an Excel format, into the PDF format for the hearing binder that was sent to everyone. So CDTFA had submitted those separately as exhibits A through H. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Appellant, did you receive those? Did you receive the files okay, including CDTFA's exhibits?
We received those.
And there was no issues with the files. You saw all your exhibits were contained within them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And CDTFA, we have A through H. You confirmed that's correct? Okay.
That's correct.
I'd also like to give a reminder at this time that any statements, I know that there's no witnesses testifying today, so just be aware that because no one's being placed under oath, we cannot consider anything that's said today as actual evidence in this matter. You're testifying as to facts in this appeal. Is that okay? And also I'd like to remind everyone that we do have a stenographer today, so please make sure not to speak over each other and to keep a moderate pace so that she can accurately transcribe the hearing today. And before we go on the record, does anyone have any statements they'd like to make or any concerns they'd like to bring to my attention?
The only one that I would have is we do have a second chair that is coming, but she's held up because of the traffic today. So she'll be showing up probably mid-hearing.
Okay.
So I'll introduce her, the empty chairs, and when she shows up, then they'll know.
Okay, we'll take a brief pause and allow you to introduce her at that time. And you're okay with proceeding without her? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and go on the record. Good morning, everyone. We are opening the record in the appeal of the Armenian Café, Inc. before the Office of Tax Appeals. The case number is 180-12082. This hearing is being convened in Los Angeles on September 17th at 10:07 a.m. Today's case is being heard by a panel of 3 judges. My name is Wim Bang. I'm the lead judge for purposes of conducting this hearing. Also on this panel with me today is Judge Kenneth Gass to my left and Judge Jeffrey Anjija to my right. Beginning with appellant, could you please state your appearance for the record?
My name is Jim Talib. I'm the representative. I'm the accountant and enrolled agent also, and I'm the power of attorney for the Armenian Café.
My name is Eddie Shakarjian. I am the Armenian Café. Yeah.
Thank you. And CDTFA?
My name is Scott Lambert, and to my far left is Dana Flanagan Macbeth, and we plan to have a second chair come mid-hearing, which will be Lisa Ramadi.
Great, thank you. The issue in this appeal is whether adjustments are warranted to the measure for unreported taxable sales. Is that correct, Mr. Talib?
Yes.
And CDTFA?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Appellant, you've submitted as evidence exhibits which are attached to your briefs, which we've combined into a PDF file which was sent to you prior to this hearing. Did you receive that file, and are there any errors in that file?
I did receive it. No errors in the file.
Okay, thank you. CDTFA, do you have any objections to admitting appellant's exhibits as evidence in this matter?
No.
Okay, thank you. And CDTFA, we've also received your exhibits A through H. Appellant, do you have any objections to entering those exhibits into evidence?
No.
Okay. So, because there's no objections, these exhibits are now entered into the record for our consideration as evidence in this matter. Mr. Talib, if you're ready, you may begin your 15-minute presentation.
So received a letter from the CDTFA or Board of Equalization at that time to conduct an audit for the years 2012 through 2014. The auditor came to my office, me as the accountant, and I presented him with sales tax returns, bank statements, invoices, federal income tax returns. He did some work at my office. Then sometime later, a month maybe more, he went to the restaurant to conduct an audit there. He spent a couple of weeks there. He looked at every sales receipt for that 2-week period in June. And in the check presenter at that time, because my client received a notice that he had to vacate the premises by the end of the year. He received it in April of 2015, I believe, or late March 2015. He started asking the customers if they can, to pay cash instead of credit cards, since he was going out of business, and to save on the fees. And in the check presenter, he had a card stating what he wanted, asking the customers to pay cash if they can. So the auditor had an opportunity there, since he looked at every every sales receipt for that 2-week period, to see that there was an evidence there for my client asking the customers to pay cash if they can. Now, the auditor also contends that...
Sorry, Mr. Taleb, I just want to interrupt you for a brief moment to note for the record that Lisa Renati has just appeared for CDTFA. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Okay. So, the auditor contends that there's a difference or inconsistency between the federal income tax returns and the sales tax reports. There's an exhibit there, and I did some analysis, and I was not consistent on how I reported deductions for sales tax or tips, but the analysis shows that there's no difference between the federal income tax return as far as taxable sales and the reports for the Board of Equalization as far as sales tax. Now, my client kept some sales receipts in his garage. Unfortunately, we couldn't find enough receipts. We didn't find any for 2014. We found just a handful for 2013. We found about, based on my estimates, about 10% of the sales receipts for 2012. I did some analysis on this, and on the sales receipt it shows whether the payment was in cash or credit card, of course, to arrive at the credit card ratio for the year, and hopefully ask the board to use it as a guide in determining the cash to credit card sales. As I said, the sample size was about 10%, which I believe is large enough for any people who do statistics. They would love to have a sample size of 10%. When pollsters, do polls right now on politicians, they only sample 1,500, maybe 2,000 Americans, and they tell you 50% support so and so. I provided them with about 310 receipts. But this wasn't enough for them, but I do believe it should be, because it's a large sample size. And the credit card ratio for that sample size was about 97–98%, which what we condemned to be all along for a long time for my customer. He's in an area where a lot of people there basically are either middle class or high income people. A lot of tourists there from Canada. It's right on the beach there on Carlsbad, on PCH. And they pay mostly with credit card. The board also refused to let us have employees testify to the fact that there wasn't enough cash for them at the end of the day to take their tips in cash. They would have to come back a day or two later till my client gets enough cash to give them tips. I have some letters from a couple of employees, but the board refused that. Also, the board would not let us use sales receipt, which we have a lot of them, as I said, from maybe like 2011, 2010. We have a lot more than in 2012 because they're outside of the audit period. Also, as far as I did some analysis for 2015 that shows the actual cash receipts, and it's on one of the exhibits there. And fourth quarter 2015, we reported 20%, third quarter 15%, second quarter 6%, first quarter 3%. For my clients, as I said, tourist area, a lot of people go to the beach, so second quarter and third quarter are always the highest as far as sales. In 2015, since my client was going out of business, he was on Facebook, and he was in business there for 28 years, letting all his customers know that he was going out of business. So they had an exceptional quarter in 2015 where sales were a lot higher than previous years. But I did some analysis to show that in one of the exhibits that normally the fourth quarter and first are the slowest of the year. And there's an exhibit there that shows that. So in 2015, I would take that as an exception to the rule as far as the fourth quarter and the higher sales. Also, the auditor, in the report, I believe his cash to credit card ratio analysis is incorrect for 2013. They're showing that there were cash receipts of 175,000, and that's not correct because he didn't take the total receipts for the quarter. So he did not include tips. If he would have included tips, the ratio would have been, the cash ratio would have been about 2-3%, as in 2012 that he did, which is, it's correct, I have no problem with that. I don't know what's so special about my client's area, to be honest with you, but he doesn't get a lot of cash. Again, one of those areas, maybe it's an exception to the rule as far as sales, as far as the kind of customers. But all along, his credit card ratio has been in the upper 90s. I've been dealing with him since 2005. I'm very familiar with his business, and there's not much cash in it. It's mostly credit cards. The auditor also wanted to find out the cost of food. So one day we went back to the kitchen. We started weighing items for the popular food, for the popular items on the menu. There are like 5 items. We started weighing the meat, the lamb, the onions, the rice, you name it, to arrive at cost for these popular menu items, so he can figure his markup. For some reason, he contends that even though we showed him, the invoices for the cost of these items and we showed him the portions, he contends that we're not true to him. We were deceiving him. You have anything, CLD? I think that's all I have to say.
Basically that's it. Our sales on that last quarter in 2015, the cash was higher because I did post a check presenter in a note in each check presenter that this is our last quarter. We got our notice, we're gonna leave, and we encourage people to pay us in cash so we could save on credit card the fees, which was at the time 3% of our sales. So people agreed to do that, and as a result, apparently the cash ratio wasn't higher on that quarter, and the auditors based their entire decision on that quarter because they're seeing a lot more cash, so therefore they assume 2012, 2013, 2014 should be the same thing. And we explain it's not. Look at the records. We have records all the way to 1998, but they ruled all this out. They just wanted to see the 3 years, and it was a lot lower. It's only on that quarter it pumped up because of what we have experienced. So that was an important thing. And then one of the auditors mentioned that they don't have any evidence that we put anything with the check presenters. And they went into the trouble to go to Yelp, to Facebook, to find a customer who posted that note that, look what these people are doing, they're asking people to pay cash. So even though that there was a proof, but the post was done in September, so they're ruling that out, that, you know, how do we know that that ticket, that note wasn't the check presenters back when the auditors was there from June 1 to June 15? And my answer to that was the auditor, he took every check presenter from us to audit before he gave it to us. So when the waitresses came, he sat on one table, put the check presenters there, he audits the cash, he audits the ticket, he writes it down, and he saw every ticket in that check presenter. So they're saying in one of the statements in the report there that we're ruling that out because the auditor has not mentioned anything about that. So, which is, to me, it's nonsense, but he witnessed every check presenter which was there. And we have a few weeks ago, I pulled a video that we have on archive at a belly dancing show that we have at the restaurant. And I zoomed right at a table where the belly dancer was performing there, and the man was putting $1 in her waist, and there was the check presenter, and that paper was right in there in that check presenter. And that was in June 3, June 4, something like it. It was that Friday that happened. So we did it. We're not deceiving anyone. This was the true thing that we have presented. There's no reason, if I wanted to cheat, I could have cheated the whole area on the fourth quarter and hide the cash. But we didn't do that. That's not what we do. So all my accounts for the previous years are all in harmony with what we have been doing in all these years, with the exception of that last quarter that they flagged us for it because of what has happened. People have left us more cash, and we reported that cash. The end.
I just want to confirm again that this cash to credit card ratio based on the auditor's analysis for 2015, our contention is that it should not be applied to the audit period because 2015 was an exceptional year for him. As I said, he was closing, he asked the customers to pay cash, and that's why he got more cash. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. At this time, I'd like to ask my panel members if they have any questions for you. Judge Njiju? Judge Gass? Okay. I don't have any questions either, so at this time, CDTFA, if you're ready, you have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you. In this particular case, the taxpayer operated a restaurant that was audited for 3 years. The years were 2012, 2013, and 2014. Upon audit, there was a lack of detailed information that was presented. There was summary information, and based on that, the markup of record was less than we would expect for this type of business. So for 2012, the markup was approximately, this is the reported markup, was 140%. For 2013, it was 116%. And for 2014, it was 122%. This is below what we would expect for this type of business. In conjunction with that, the amount of cash sales that were reported were extremely low for this type of business. As the appellant stated, they had reported about 3% of their sales as cash sales. So based on that, the department decided to conduct an observation test. And so we went out for 1 day, observed what the appellant was reporting in the records. It appeared to be acceptable to us, and so what we did is we asked the appellant to keep records for a 2-week period, in which they did. They kept track from June 1st of 2015 through June 14th of 2015. And a detail, well, a summary by day is recorded on the department's exhibit, date stamp 33. So what you'll see there is the observation test by day. If you look at column D, that will be the cash sales, which includes sales tax. And during this period of time, it's a little bit hard for me to see, but from memory, I believe it was $9,800 or so in cash sales with sales tax for that 14-day period. We compared that to the credit card sales that were made, and that's where we come up with the credit card percentage of 79.75%. So it was established based on the appellant's records for a 2-week period that they retained. Now, we weren't able to do it for the other periods because we had some of the information that they provided, but we didn't have all the information. And we're not disputing that the information that they provided to us shows a cash sales per day of about 2.5%. We don't believe we have all the records, and we also believe there's a likelihood that cash sales were not included either in those, all of those reports that they provided to us, or the other reports had more cash sales in them. And it's difficult to do comparisons in this case because we don't have the detailed records to look at, but what I would point you to is the appellant did analysis on their page 60. And I will, that's at the top. So the one thing we do know is the cash sales for a 2-week period in June was, I'm sorry, it was I can see it better now, $9,489 in cash sales for the 2-week period in June 2015. If you take a look at Appellant's Exhibit 60 for the second quarter, it'll show reported cash receipts of $19,170. So even though this is outside the audit period, because the audit period ended in 2014, I believe it's a good example of showing why we don't believe all the cash sales were recorded and reported by the appellant. So they have $19,170 that they reported as cash sales for the second quarter of 2015. We know 9,500 of that came from a 2-week period. So if you subtract out the $9,500 from 19,170, you're going to come up with about $9,600 in cash. We would assume that the second half of June of 15 probably had similar cash sales during that period. So essentially what that means is the taxpayer reported 0 cash sales in April and May of 2015. We don't believe that to be reasonable. The arguments that have been made is that starting in April, the taxpayer asked customers to pay in cash. We believe that this 20% was consistent throughout the audit period. It does show in the fourth quarter that there is 20% cash sales. We believe that that happened throughout the audit period. And the fact that there were no cash sales reported for April and May of 2015, which doesn't appear to be reasonable, is consistent with cash sales not being recorded. For a business of this type, we would expect cash sales to run in the 80% area. It can obviously vary by the type, the location and the type of restaurant. Generally, the more expensive dine-in restaurants have a higher credit card percentage. 80% is consistent in the range with what we would find. So when we use the 80% factor to develop what the audited taxable sales are, the post markup percentage falls in range with what we would expect. For 2012, it comes to 171%. For 2013, it's 176%. And 2014, it's 184%. And this is consistent with what we would expect for this type of business to have as a markup. For those reasons, the audit was conducted in the manner that it was, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. I just had one question for you. I believe the taxpayer, Mr. Talib, had raised an issue with the calculation for 2013. Mm-hmm. You referenced a $175,000 figure.
Right.
Are you able to address that?
Sure. And I believe he is correct in that analysis. What they were trying to do on the schedule that he's referring to was determine what the cash was reported. And so this was an initial analysis that was done by the auditor, and I do believe they forgot to take the tips out of that analysis. But what that does is it basically lowers the cash that they reported. So it would make it, in my opinion, worse for the appellant in that they reported less cash sales than what we showed there. But in any case, that's not what we used to establish the audited taxable measure. We used the credit card method. So even though our analysis, there should have been an adjustment for that, it would have shown less cash in that year, but it doesn't have any effect on the end results of what we ultimately determined.
Thank you so much for your explanation. At this time, I'd like to turn to the panel. Judge Njija, do you have any questions?
No questions.
No questions?
No.
Okay. Judge Gass, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for your presentations. The record in this appeal is now closed and the appeal will be submitted for decision. We will meet, deliberate, and we endeavor to have a written decision issued sometime within, I'm sorry, I forgot to give you your closing presentation. I'm terribly sorry about that. Mr. Talib, if you're ready, you may have 5 minutes for your closing.
As far as the cash receipts for the year 2015, I mean, look at how much cash we reported for the, there's an exhibit there for the third and fourth quarters, and sales were not up by that much. I mean, fourth quarter 2015, it's almost similar to the first quarter of 2015. The first quarter we reported $8,715 cash, but in the fourth quarter, on sales of 338,000 for the fourth quarter, we reported almost $71,000 in cash. The first quarter sales were 281, that includes tax and tips, of course, and we reported only 8,000. Well, you know, guys, we're the exception to the rule as far as food cost and as far as credit card to cash ratio. Why can't we be? Why does everyone has to fall within their parameters? Thank you.
We don't, if we wanted not to pay or not to report the cash, we would have done that on the fourth quarter if we have been accused of that numerous times. but that's not our thing. We did report everything we got on first, second, third, fourth quarter. Again, not to repeat, the ratio increased of the cash because of what we did. We just didn't ask people to pay us in cash so we could pay, try to save that 3% on the credit card fees. Plus, the cost of the food that I use, it's nothing to be compared to any other restaurant, and my clients know that. My cost of the food is a lot higher. I sell a lamb kebab plate for $14, where my lamb per pound is costing me about $18. So, no, the restaurant operates that way, but we did, and it pushed our cost high. But we did it because that was in our style, and that was our food, and that's why we had the business we had. He mentioned that there were no cash reported in first quarter, I think, or the second quarter. He said in April and May, and that's not true, because we did report cash. So that's a contradiction there. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. CDTFA, if you're ready, you may have 5 minutes for your closing.
We have nothing further.
Okay. So now, thank you everyone for your presentations. The record in this matter is now closed, and the appeal submitted for decision. We will meet and deliberate on this case, and we endeavor to have a written decision to you within 100 days. Thank you. This hearing is now adjourned.
Tax Appeals, oral hearing for the appeal of Jacob Dean Steward. Case ID is 1801, I've got it wrong already, 1801-1990. We are in Los Angeles, California. It's Tuesday, September 17th, 2019. It's 10:45 a.m. My name is Jeff Angija. I'm the lead administrative law judge for this hearing, and my co-panelists today are Linda Chang to my left and Richard Tay to my right. And appellant, could you please identify yourselves for the record?
Yes, good morning. My name is Jacob Steward. I'm the appellate, and my representative is here with me, Sean Kaysen.
All right.
He is not an attorney. He's my domestic partner.
Okay. And for CDTFA, please introduce yourselves.
Kevin Fed, with me right here is Monica Silva and Lisa Renati.
All right, thank you. And this appeal involves two issues, which are whether appellant's purchase and use of a recreational vehicle in California is subject to use tax, and whether appellant is entitled to an offset for excess tax reimbursement. During our pre-hearing conferences, the parties agreed to the admission into evidence of appellant's Exhibit 1 and CDTFA's Exhibits A through P. Neither party had any objection to the admission of those exhibits. Is that still the case?
Correct.
No objections?
No objection.
I do have an objection to the repair orders that have been submitted by CDTFA, which we noticed in our first pre-trial conference that they are incomplete. We submitted some that we found that they did not submit at the beginning of the case, so.
We have that as your Exhibit 1, I believe, right?
Yes.
So if yours is the more complete set, either way it'll all come in, but we'll make note that theirs may be an incomplete record.
I guess my concern that I'd like to stipulate is that we can't validate that since
Okay.
that everything is contained within that.
We'll note that concern, we'll
Thank
take
you.
that into account when we review it. But
Okay.
for purposes of admitting it into the hearing record, I'll admit your Exhibit 1 and their Exhibits A through P, and
That's
we'll weigh it for what it's worth.
Thank you.
And based on our pre-hearing conference, it's my understanding that both of you will testify as witnesses today, which means I'll swear you under oath.
Okay.
Okay, so when we get to that spot, I'll do that.
Okay.
And we agree, and CDTFA has no witnesses. That's still correct?
Correct.
All right. And we agreed during our pre-hearing conference that we'll begin with appellant's testimony and argument, which should not exceed 30 minutes. And CDTFA can ask questions, as can the judges. CDTFA will then make its presentation not to exceed 15 minutes, and appellant can ask questions if he wishes, as can the judges. and then we'll allow a 5-minute rebuttal, just like you saw with the prior case. So if there's no questions as to procedure, we'll get started. I'll swear you in if you both please, you're both going to testify or just one?
Correct. We did request a witness be able to make a statement as far as where the RV was used. However, they were not added to the agenda, so we didn't have them appear today.
Okay, but we can still, we'll
Yes.
start both of these. And like I said in the pre-hearing conference, with an eye towards the clock, redundant testimony is not going to help you.
Correct.
So, okay. Both please stand and raise your right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Be seated. Please begin whenever you're ready. I don't know who's going to go first, but we've sworn you both in, so I'll take
Okay.
those.
Well, this case goes back many, many years, as everyone in the room is aware. Our position's been this. First of all, the RV was purchased for the use in the state of Arizona, not California. We took delivery of it in the state of Arizona. We rented a RV space in the state of Arizona, Lake Havasu City, to be specific. For whatever reason, the BOE at the time requested proof that we were utilizing this in the state of Arizona. We sent them that proof over the years, which included a rental agreement for the space that was rented or leased in the state of Arizona, fuel receipts, storage receipts, etc. This wasn't enough proof to them. This did not convince the BOE at the time that this was utilized for that. Somewhere along the line, the BOE took it upon themselves to gather repair orders from Mike Thompson's RV in the state of California for repair and service work for the RV, without our knowledge, without our consent. And as I stated earlier, these repair orders are very incomplete. There's several visits missing. There's inaccurate mileage logged by Mike Thompson's, as well as repair orders from Redland's truck. So to explain, an RV has a chassis and it has a body. So whenever you have warranty work, you have to take it sometimes to two different places, which we were forced to do in this case. So the BOE gathers this as their case and says, hey, you owe this tax, but again, very inconclusive, a lot of stuff missing, a lot of gaps. So we kind of go in and find repair orders that we had records of that were missing. And we've been arguing this case for, I think, close to 7 years now. We've been reassigned to different auditors, different representatives, different everything. You would submit your rebuttal or appeal, and you literally won't hear anything back until 6 months later. Anyways, besides the point. The next thing that's very important is that we established that this was used in the state of Arizona. The repair orders were for warranty and service work. We've, without any doubt whatsoever, that this was purchased for the state of Arizona. This particular RV was in the shop so many times, which are clearly evident by the repair orders in front of everybody, that the manufacturer voluntarily decided under the Song and Beverly Act to repurchase the motorhome back, which is also known as the Lemon Law. Under California law and the Lemon Law, sales tax would be refunded to the purchaser. And we've established this with the CDTFA, and they refuse to even read that law or acknowledge that. So we submitted proof, and they contend that this, I don't know why this keeps going on.
It seems as the batteries wear, we're going to talk directly into it.
They contend that this unit was traded in. They have nothing at all to support that, including my letter from the manufacturer that says that they are going to buy it back and replace it. We have submitted proof that sales tax was paid to the state of Arizona. We have established that there should be an offset for that, and I should stipulate that the amount that they are now saying is should be offset is incorrect. Our records show a much higher amount than that, closer to $6,000, but we can get to that later. So again, going back to the Song and Beverly Act and Lemon Law, this unit that they're trying to tax us, double tax us on, doesn't apply. Sales tax, had it been paid in the state of California, would have been refunded. Sales tax was paid on the replacement unit. We've established that by their own audit, and I believe by order of the judge. So sales tax has been paid. There's no question about that. What they're trying to assert is we should pay it twice on a lemon law unit. So obviously I don't agree with that, and that's why we're here today. Just a matter of principle. That's all I have.
So just to reiterate and to clarify, the repair orders, as we have noted and commented several times over the last several years to the BOE regarding those repair orders, they are inconclusive in terms of their content based on mileage in and out of the shop. So Mike Thompson's RV has a habit, as we have demonstrated and shown on those documents, that they do the mileage check-in is the same as the check-out, so there is misalignment there. And we have demonstrated that on those repair orders to show that that's the case. So originally, and this probably goes back, I would say, 10 or 15 BOE representatives ago, because this case has changed hands about 20 times with their group, where we outlined that and submitted that again to the department for review. And of course, I think they misplaced those at some point when they changed representatives again. So we have provided that evidence several times, but I just wanted to specify that on that mileage clarification, that that part of their argument doesn't hold, because the RV dealership does not accurately reflect that on those repair orders consistently. Also of note, we did provide evidence that sales tax was paid to the state of Arizona, which created an offset on the original purchase. So if you take that into consideration, we've actually overpaid tax, right? We paid the $6,000 to Arizona. We paid over $8,000 to the state of California. So we've actually overpaid, when you combine all those two together, the taxes for this purchase, which once again goes counter to their arguments. So I just wanted to add that in as well.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Quick question for clarification. They've conceded, have it in my notes, I don't have it in front of me, tax was paid to Arizona in the amount of, I believe it was 48.
Yeah, $4,875.22.
Okay, you were gonna try to find a
Correct.
canceled check.
So I have the check stub, but not the canceled check. And since this goes back to 2010, when the check was written December 1st, 2010 for $6,925.04. In the great state of Arizona, and I am a citizen of this California, only $8 of that is registration. The rest is tax. $1.50 acquisition fee, $2.49 for PST, and $4 for title. So roughly close to that $6,900 that I gave you is all tax. And I thought I submitted this, and it breaks it down on the right-hand side. Vehicle license tax, DOR, and it says what these fees are for, basically. So, like I said, that $4,800 is low.
Okay, will you guys address that in your presentation? Or do we want?
We can do it right now.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The VLT, the vehicle licensing, that's a licensing fee, essentially a registration fee to Arizona. We don't give a credit for that. What we give the credit for is the amount paid to the Department of Revenue in Arizona. That would be the $4,875.22. So I think that's where the discrepancy is coming from.
Okay, and I agree on those amounts, but I don't know who the decision maker is in deciding what is applicable to tax and what is not, so.
Okay, but I think I've seen that document, so we'll be able to, I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
And then, my understanding is this is a petition for redetermination, not a claim for refund. So you haven't paid the tax yet. I realize they've assessed it or proposed to assess it. So the argument about double taxation is true if they prevail and they collect it. You haven't paid yet.
No, we have paid sales tax both on the 2010, the original unit. Sales tax was paid, not to the state of California, because we didn't purchase it for the use of the state of California.
The seller paid that. They've stipulated that the seller paid, not on the 2010, on the 2013.
The 2013, the manufacturer, Fleetwood.
Right, but for the 2010, nobody paid tax yet because it was delivered out of state, it was an interstate commerce sale, you signed the 447, 448.
Correct.
So
That's what they're wanting.
right, but your statement was that you had paid the tax. I just want to clarify, to my knowledge, it hasn't been paid.
Yeah, I'm sorry, let me just clarify that. So the state is arguing that they're going to credit $4,875 to what they think we owe the
Yes.
state of California.
And if they collected, your argument is it's double
Correct,
taxation.
exactly, sorry, I just wanted to, yeah.
Go ahead.
And to go back to his point as far as us paying, we would be owed a refund. Had this followed the normal statute of limitations as far as a 2 to 4 year process, depending on precedent in the case, we could have applied for a refund for the state of Arizona to get that money back. But unfortunately, this has been dragging out. So if I go to Arizona right now and say, hey, would you give us this money back? This was, a lemon. I'm sure they would laugh at us.
Okay.
But that's not your guys' problem. I understand that.
Okay, all right, that clarifies my confusion. Questions from the judges?
Actually, I do have a question. For the appellant, you said that, sorry. So you said,
I can hear you fine, but I don't know if
Okay.
you need to.
so you said that the repair orders from CDTFA are inaccurate and inconclusive. What is your position on that as to mileage? According to your documents, is mileage higher, lower, and how does it affect your position?
So they tried to establish that this was not used in the state of Arizona by coming up with mileage calculations. And I can't say they, because we've been through so many different people. In fact, one of my questions was for them directly was, have they analyzed what they submitted, and do they come to the same conclusion? And also with the additional repair orders that we provided that were conveniently missing when they submitted this case many years ago. So I could not under oath tell you that I could form any solid opinion because of what my partner said is the first problem. Mike Thompson's, they're relying on the dealer and the mileage that they log on the repair order to make that conclusion. They're also relying on repair orders they never had because they went and somehow got access to these. We still don't know that. Probably irrelevant, but it's important to bring light to. It isn't as if they came to us and said, hey, we think there's a problem here. Provide us with some sort of proof. That's not how this worked. So to say, I don't know how they came up with the mileage calculation. And being that Mike Thompson's, again, will say, hey, the unit came in with 2,500 miles and it left 2 weeks later with 2,500 miles, and the repair order will stipulate that they test drove the vehicle, doesn't make sense. It really degrades the integrity of that repair order, which is the whole basis that they're relying their first issue on. I don't know if that answers your question.
So just to clarify, back several years ago, one of the claims that BOE made was that based on the repair orders, right, the RV spent more time in California for use than it did in Arizona, right? So the reason it was in California, and it was in California for a significant amount of time that first year, was because of all the defective issues with the unit. So the repair orders were used to back up our claim that the reason the RV spent so much time back in California, so Arizona, Lake Havasu doesn't have an RV repair place for warranty work. So just to state that. So it had to be brought back to California to Mike Thompson's where we purchased it for the warranty covered work. And Redland's truck. So it spent a significant time in California for those repairs. I mean, I don't remember how many days it was, but it was significant when you add it all up. So their contention was the repair orders do not match that exact time that you're stating this unit had to be back in California for repairs, based on the mileage of driving from Arizona, from Lake Havasu to Mike Thompson's. So the problem with that is, one, their repair order history was incomplete, even though we provided them with everything, including the Redlands truck invoices, several times, by the way. The other problem is the mileage that was reported on those repair orders by Mike Thompson's and Redlands truck was not accurate, right? They just took a standard, it says 2,500 miles on it, and they would just use that as the standard on the repair orders, check in and check out. So there was misalignment with the mileage between driving from Lake Havasu to Mike Thompson's, right? So they were using that as their contention that this vehicle was purchased really for use in California, not Arizona, right? So that's where I was trying to provide some clarification on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, CDTFA, go ahead.
Thank you. This appeal should be denied, as appellant's purchase and use of the 2010 Bounder RV in California is subject to use tax. Additionally, there is no legal basis for an offset for any tax paid by the RV dealer when furnished appellant with a replacement RV. Turning first to appellant's use of the RV in California. For purchasers of vehicles, Revenue and Taxation Code Section 6248, Subdivision A, establishes a 12-month test for determining whether a vehicle was purchased for use in California, and thus is subject to use tax. Under that test, it is rebuttably presumed that a vehicle purchased and first functionally used outside California, but brought into California within 12 months of the date of purchase, was acquired for storage, use, or other consumption in California, and is subject to use tax. If the vehicle was purchased by a California resident, as defined in Section 516 of the Vehicle Code. And here it is undisputed that appellant was a California resident at the time of the purchase of the 2010 Bounder RV motorhome. The presumption that the vehicle was purchased for use in California may be rebutted by documentary evidence that the vehicle was purchased for use outside of California during the first 12 months of ownership. This evidence may include, but is not limited to, documentary evidence that the vehicle was brought into the state for the exclusive purpose of warranty, repair, or service, and was used or stored in the state for that purpose for 30 days or less. So here we're focusing on the number of days that it was in the state, not the mileage. The 30-day period begins when the vehicle enters the state, includes any time of travel to and from the warranty or repair facility, and ends when the vehicle is returned to a point outside the state. Here, there is no dispute that the evidence shows that appellant took possession of the RV outside of California and first functionally used the vehicle outside of California. There is also no dispute that the evidence shows that appellant drove the motorhome back into California on January 7th, 2011, which was within 12 months of the purchase date of November 30th, 2010. Because appellant was a California resident at the time of purchase, and the RV was brought back into California within 12 months of its purchase, there was a rebuttable presumption that the RV was purchased for use in California. If the RV had entered California solely for qualifying repair service, and if the RV's presence in California for that purpose did not exceed 30 days during the applicable period, then the appellant would not be regarded as having purchased a motorhome for use in California. But here, based on the service records provided in our Exhibit L, the RV was in California for at least 115 days. Furthermore, according to appellant's handwritten notation on Exhibit N, the RV was in California from March 28, 2011 until May 24, 2011, which was an additional 57 days in California. Therefore, the evidence establishes that the RV was in California for at least 172 days in the 12-month period following the purchase date. Although appellant states that the sole purpose for these trips was for service and/or repairs, Regulation 1620 Subdivision B5A1 only allows purchasers to bring a vehicle into California for repairs for up to 30 days. The appellant has exceeded this amount, and therefore he is presumed to have purchased the RV for use in California and use taxes owed. Now we next turn to the second issue, whether an offset for excess tax reimbursement should be made to appellant's use tax liability, because the RV dealer remitted sales tax to CDTFA when it furnished appellant with a replacement RV, it's the 2013 RV. Regulation 1700 does not provide for an offset if a taxpayer who has collected Regulation 1700 does provide for an offset if a taxpayer who has collected excess tax reimbursement on a transaction fails or refuses to refund the excess tax collected to the customer who paid it. The excess tax reimbursement can be offset against any tax liability of the taxpayer on the same transaction. Such offsets can only be made on a transaction-by-transaction basis, in that the excess tax reimbursement collected on a specific transaction can only be used to satisfy a tax liability arising from the same transaction. Regulation 1700 goes on to state that the same transaction means all activities involved in the acquisition and disposition of the same property. The facts of this case do not allow for an offset under Regulation 1700 for several reasons. First, Regulation 1700 requires that a taxpayer collect excess tax reimbursement. Here, there is no evidence that appellant paid any tax reimbursement to the RV dealer. The RV dealer paid the tax without collecting any tax reimbursement. Therefore, Regulation 1700 cannot apply. Second, even assuming for argument's sake there was excess tax reimbursement collected by the RV dealer, Regulation 1700 requires that the offset be made on the same transaction. Here, there are two separate transactions. The first was the sale of the 2010 RV, and the second, the sale of the 2013 RV. Further, even if we accept that this was still all one transaction, the transactions did not involve the same property. Again, one was a 2010 RV, and the other a 2013 RV. Therefore, an offset is not allowed. Additionally, Regulation 1700 allows the offset for tax liability of the taxpayer. In this case, the RV dealer, not the liability of a customer, in this case, appellant. There is no offset allowed, and appellant still owes use tax for the use of the 2010 RV in California. The appellant is not being asked to pay tax twice. The appellant has never paid tax even once. The appellant purchased an RV in 2010, used it inside California, and paid no tax on that use. The appellant then obtained a replacement 2013 RV and paid no tax on that purchase. And then we note after receiving appellant's exhibits that we have provided a credit to appellant's liability for the tax appellant paid to Arizona. The document appellant submitted as his Exhibit E establishes that appellant paid tax in the amount of $4,875.22 to Arizona. That tax payment reduces appellant's tax liability from $8,878.35 to $4,003.13. Subject to this adjustment, this appeal should be denied. Thank you.
All right. I will have questions. I think I want to hold them to the end. All right. I'll give you the chance to rebut, and then I will.
Okay, so again, they're stipulating that I purchased an RV that I could have in the repair shop for how many days? This is what baffles me, is they say that I bought this RV for use in California, but yet their sole evidence and my documentation shows that that RV was in the shop almost all the time. This is what baffles me and frustrates me. There's no question that the RV was purchased and taken to a resort in California and utilized. Now, I'm trying to make a point here. Anyways, so the fact that it was here over 30 days, and there also is a period that it was at Mike Thompson's for a long time, that's when Fleetwood said, look, this thing is a hunk of junk. We're going to go ahead and lemon law this and buy it back. So they held on to it for quite a long time while we waited for the replacement unit. I cannot emphasize that enough, replacement unit. Now, I don't know what's any different, and this goes back to the argument as far as who paid tax or what. Tax is due on the actual merchandise. This is called sales tax. You're paying tax on the item that you purchased. Who pays it, what individual, I'm not gonna get into that technicalities. But for instance, BMW repurchased, and I know this isn't part of this case, repurchased my vehicle under lemon law in the state of California. So there is a process that happens for the sales tax that was paid by me when I initially purchased or leased that vehicle. Then in turn, when they replace the vehicle, in this case, a separate unit, and it's called the Song and Beverly Act. And I have asked repeatedly that these three people to my left on the telephone, that they review that information, and they have flat out refused. Because it spells out pretty clearly in this process. So that's what I have in rebuttal.
I would just quickly like to add, first of all, it's interesting that CDTA just indicated that it was a replacement unit. I don't know if you caught that, but he did specifically state on the replacement units. So in terms of a 2010 versus a 2013, I don't understand the relevance there, because that is simply a matter of when the unit was replaced. In 2013, Fleetwood no longer made a 2010. If they did, they would have replaced it with another 2010. So I'm a little confused about that. The other thing is, how am I supposed to hold a manufacturer to 30 days for repairs? I don't know how to do that, quite honestly. It's not to mention this had to go to 2 different shops for several different issues, so I'm not sure 30 days comes into that. The other interesting thing is they're actually using the repair orders as their justification for us saying we used the motorhome in California, which I also feel is very ironic in this process, right? If those repair orders didn't exist, the only thing they would have to go on is our receipts from the resort in Arizona where the RV stayed, which we have provided. So I find it interesting that outside of those repair orders, the record completely shows that the RV was used in Arizona. So once again, I don't understand how we are to be held to a 30-day count by a manufacturer, by a repair shop, by a dealership. And I can tell you, and we've been sworn in here, we did not camp at Mike Thompson's RV. We never once had our chairs out there with the awning out, watching TV in the repair shop at Mike Thompson's RV. Just so you know that we never camped there. We never had our friends there. We never, had campfires and cookouts at Mike Thompson's RV. So I just wanted to make those 2 clarifications. Thank you.
So just one last thing in closing. Again, the 2010 RV that the state of California or CDTFA wants taxes paid on, we don't have anymore. The manufacturer has taken that away from us because it was a lemon. We do not have it. We do not have possession of it. They've replaced it with a 2013. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. All right, so I have some questions. For CDTFA, do you concede that the 2013 was a warranty replacement from the 2010? Now my mic is saying no.
Yes, we do.
So under a warranty?
Right.
And it doesn't have to have been a lemon law, because I realize there's criteria for that.
Right.
All right, and we've conceded that the seller paid sales tax on that replacement transaction.
I think that's right. I think they said the manufacturer paid the sales tax.
The seller, I think it was Mike Thompson.
Fleetwood RV paid.
Fleetwood RV.
We confirmed that.
Exhibit P shows, and that's the seller. I'm trying to keep names out of this and not divulge other people's confidential tax information. But Exhibit P is the purchase order. It shows tax paid and it says the seller. So I've been referring to it as the seller. So I guess my first, and it's a legal question, is not the provision of property pursuant to a mandatory warranty, isn't that part of the same transaction? Tax was not due on the transfer of the replacement vehicle.
We don't see it as the same transaction because, again, these are 2 different. One was a purchase, the initial purchase in 2010 of an RV with a use tax transaction. The second was a sales tax transaction in 2013. So we don't see them as the same transaction. But even if we did, again, this regulation specifies that has to be the same property. And again, this is not the same property.
Right, so let me put it differently. I go to Home Depot, and this is not new. I said this over the phone in our pre-hearing conferences. I buy a refrigerator from Home Depot. Comes with a 1-year mandatory warranty. I can't get the fridge without paying for that warranty, 1-year free replacement. 6 months in, they can't fix it. They come and they deliver a new refrigerator and take away the old one. They're not charging me for another one, right? Now, in my hypo, tax was paid on the first one, but it's not a separate transaction. It's still the disposition or acquisition of that same refrigerator, is it not? Because the first one was defective, they replace it under warranty. That second transaction is not a taxable sale. It's not a sale. It's not a sale at all. It was sold with the first refrigerator. So how is the RV any different? Other than the passage of 3 years, but it was still replaced under warranty.
Under that scenario, we would agree that the second transaction is not a taxable transaction. So in this case, although the RV dealer paid the tax, it was not a taxable transaction.
Right.
It's up to the seller to file a claim for refund for that amount.
Right.
So I don't know that we're in a disagreement with you as far as the replacement under warranty.
Well, his answer was that, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, so I apologize, just his argument was that they're two separate pieces of property, but it's the disposition of the first that results in the provision of the transfer, of the replacement RV. It's still part of the same transaction so far as I can see. It's not as if there was a credit allowed for trade-in allowance. I was looking at Exhibit P. It says NA for interest payments, the number of payments, the interest rate for the trade-in allowance. I mean, it looks to be a warranty replacement.
But I think that there's a difference between the 1,700 same transaction and the replacement under the mandatory warranty. So I think it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. We agreed with you that the warranty replacement, there was no sales tax on the second transaction, but under 1,700, when you're looking at an offset for excess tax reimbursement, I think you do have to have the same transaction. It's often where a seller has charged excess tax reimbursement sales tax and they should have paid use tax, so they charged tax on something they shouldn't have taxed. And now they have excess tax reimbursement and they owe on their use tax transaction. So 1,700 allows for that taxpayer to take an offset on the excess tax reimbursement they collected on a non-taxable transaction. So I think they're separate sections, and the 1,700 offset we're arguing does not apply here. And I would agree with you that the 1655 replacement under warranty is applicable in the sense that the second transaction was not taxable, and in this case the RV seller needn't have paid sales tax, and while it appears that they did, it would be for them to file a claim for refund. The bottom line is there was never use tax paid on the first transaction, and that's the issue, is use tax owing, was use tax paid.
And then does CDTFA have a response to the argument that it's essentially a windfall for the state? You've collected tax twice, one on a non-taxable transaction and the other one on a arguably, assuming the first issue we defined it was purchased for use in the state, you collect tax twice.
Well, we don't see it as collecting tax twice because they're two different transactions. In 2010, it was a use tax transaction. They said it was going to be used outside of the state. It was not used outside of the state. It was used in California. You owe tax on that use. And 2013 was a sales tax transaction. Taxes due on that one as well. I think it would be more inequitable to not make a person that purchases a vehicle pay tax. I mean, everybody that drives a car in California, everybody here that's purchased a car has paid tax on it. The idea that they can not pay tax on either vehicle just doesn't seem fair. That's where we're going.
Which would have happened if he had left it outside the state for 1 year, or for 12 months and 1 day.
Right. If you didn't,
Okay. I don't have any other questions. If my colleagues do.
No.
All right. Well, we have a factual and legal case to resolve. If there's no additional questions or evidence, I'll close the record at this point and conclude the hearing. I want to thank each party for coming in today, fighting the traffic. Following this hearing, my co-panelists and I will discuss the evidence and argument, and we will issue a written opinion within 100 days. And I think that'll do it. This hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Are you really?
Yes.
Is that like, do you catch it? Are you? No, you are? How can you be allergic to nuts? Like, it's so different. Those are my favorite. Those are my
It is.
Do you go to Costco?
Both were on.
That's why I was here tonight.
You think that's what it was?
I think maybe tested.
Good morning and welcome to the Office of Tax Appeals. My name is Win Dang. I'm the lead judge for purposes of conducting this hearing today. Also on the panel with me is Judge Daniel Cho to my left. And Judge Richard Tate to my right.
Good morning.
Before we start, I'd just like to take care of a few housekeeping issues. Could you please introduce yourself? And I'm so glad you're able to finally make it. I know it's not the easiest to find our office.
My name is Sunny, last name YU. Thank you for waiting for me, and I do apologize again for the delay.
I'm so glad you're able to find our office. I know it's not easy. Before we go through this hearing process, do you have a preference for the translation in terms of pacing? Would you like us to speak maybe a few sentences and pause for the translation, or will you be translating in real time?
If you could pause a little bit,
Okay.
if you think that you've talked some amount, then that would be helpful.
Okay.
But I don't want to interrupt your procedures or anything.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just, for the taxpayer's benefit, I want to make sure that he's capturing everything we're saying.
Yes, and if it's possible, I can just whisper, tell him, instead of, just stopping, and then would you prefer for me to stop? So everybody could hear?
I would prefer if we could proceed normally and you could whisper to him,
Okay.
if you're capable, if that's
Okay.
possible.
Yeah, that will save time too.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Is there anything anyone would like to mention, any concerns or questions before we start?
No.
No.
No, okay. So let's go ahead and go on the record if you're ready. We are opening the record in the appeal of Ju Un Inc. before the Office of Tax Appeals. The case number is 180-22357. This hearing is being convened in Los Angeles on September 17, 2019 at 11:45 a.m. Today's case is being heard by a panel of 3 judges. My name is Win Dang, and I'm the lead judge for purposes of conducting this hearing today. Also on the panel with me is Judge Daniel Cho to my left and Judge Richard Tate to my right. Beginning with appellant, could you please state your appearance for the record?
I will be helping the client today. My name is Sunny Yu. I'm the translator.
네, 제 이름은 주은잉커의 강신혁이라고 합니다.
My name is Junik.
강신혁.
My current name is Kang Shin-hyuk.
Thank you. CDTFA?
My name is Scott Lambert. To my left is Dana Flanagan Macbeth, and to her left is Lisa Renati, representing California Department of Tax and Fee Administration.
Thank you and welcome. The issue I have today is whether adjustments are warranted to the measure for unreported taxable sales. Is that correct, appellant?
제품을 한국 소유되는 데 대한 받아 세금 때문에 그렇죠?
네, 맞습니다.
Yes, that's
CDTFA?
right.
Correct.
Thank you. CDTFA has offered exhibits A through F as evidence in this matter. Is there any objections to having CDTFA's exhibits entered into evidence? Mr. Ken?
저기 왼쪽에 계신 분들이 증거를 제시하는데요. A부터 F까지. 거절 없으시죠?
네,
No.
CDTFA's, your exhibits A through F are now admitted into evidence. Appellant has not submitted any exhibits for our consideration or any evidence in this matter.
증거 제시하는 거고, 증거까지 제시하는 거고요.
Before I begin, I would need to swear in both Mr. Kang and yourself. I'll be swearing, Miss Yu, I'll be swearing you in first. You could please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will truthfully and accurately translate from Korean to English and from English to Korean?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Kang, if you could please rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. You may be seated. If you're ready, Mr. Kang, you have 15 minutes for your presentation.
네. 시작하나요?
Yes, sir.
네, 감사합니다. 이렇게 시간을 만드셔서 감사드리고요. 저는 2006년 8월에 주어닝크란 회사 이름으로 리버사이드 모레나밸리에서 시식집을 시작했었습니다.
천천히. 그거보다 좀 천천히. 다시 한번 해주세요.
네, 저는 2006년 8월에 주어닝크란 회사 이름으로 리버사이드 모레나밸리에서 스시집을 시작했습니다.
In 2006, in August, I started my sushi business in Riverside, Juning.
네, 제가 가게하고 한 1년 정도 됐을 때 미국 전역에 이 이코노미 크라이시스가 왔습니다. 그래서 제가 가 있던 그 몰에 쇼핑몰에 있던 알버슨, 타겟 그리고 세븐식스 캐스테이션이 2007년도에 문을 닫기 시작했습니다.
So after I opened my store, there was an economic crisis and the mall wasn't doing very well. Stores like Albertson, Targets, and 7-Eleven slowly closed in the mall.
그래서 작은 몰이 거의 텅 빈 상태로 있었고 그 몰에 이제 남아 있는 게 저희 가게하고 코인 런드리, 네일샵, 드라이 클리닝 이렇게 한 5개가 남아 있었습니다.
So the small mall was empty, and the only stores left was like nail shops and a laundry, and only a few shops left in the mall.
그때부터 이제 장사가 제가 가게하고 나서 1년도 안 됐는데 그때부터 장사가 안 되기 시작하고 너무 힘들어졌습니다. 그래서 2009년도에 이제 와이프하고 저하고 둘이서만 이제 가게를 하기 시작했습니다.
So after that, I was struggling to maintain the store, and in 2009, my wife and I decided to run the store by ourselves.
그리고 나서 한국에서 이제 2,000불, 3,000불씩 형제들한테 돈을 빌려서 가게를 운영하게 됐습니다.
And I started to loan money from family in Korea, $2,000 and $3,000 when I could.
그 당시에 저희 그 가게 한 3마일 정도 있는데 일식집이 3개가 있었습니다. 키노야, 오이시, 해피뷔페 이렇게 3개가 있었는데 그 사람들은 주인이 바뀌면서 전부 올리케니 그 뷔페로 전부 바꿨습니다.
So there were a few sushi places 3 miles within our store, and the small stores changed their menu to all you can eat.
저희는 그 와이프하고 저하고 둘이서 장사가 안 되고 돈도 없고 그러니까 올리케인스로 바꾸지도 못하고 저희가 가게를 팔려고 굉장히 애를 썼는데 가게도 팔 수가 없었습니다.
And we were struggling at that time, so we couldn't sell the store, and we tried to sell the store for a long time.
저희 가게가 한 달에 보통 매상이 5,000불 정도, 6,000불 정도 이렇게 나왔습니다. 근데 제가 왜 그 형제들한테 돈을 빌려왔냐면 제가 그 2,000불, 3,000불을 더해서 입금을 시켰습니다. 매상으로 잡았습니다.
So our income from the store was around 5,000 to 6,000, and the reason why I borrowed some money from my family was I paid back the money with interest.
그 이유는 제가 그 당시에 제 미국의 스테이투스가 E2 비자를 있었습니다. 그래서 이 매상이 낮으면 이투 비자가 연장이 안 되기 때문에 그 2년마다 하는 연장을 하려고 제가 돈을 빌려서 입금을 더 시킨 겁니다.
So I was my status was on E2 visa, and in order to maintain this status and continue, I had to deposit more money. So that's why I did that every 2 years.
그때 2012년도하고 2013년도에 IRS에서 2번이나 나왔었습니다. 저희가 매출이 이렇게 적으니까 확인하러 나온 것 같았습니다. 그래서 그 사람들이 나와서 점심시간 때 12시쯤 와서 한 30분쯤 있다가 이렇게 갔거든요. 그 사람들이 이제 와서 노트북 갖고 와서 체크하고 페이퍼를 끊어주고 뭔지를 잘 모르겠습니다. 그리고 갔었습니다.
So in 2012 and 2013, people from IRS came and they were trying to check if my status was okay. So they would come around the lunchtime and stay around for 30 minutes or so.
그리고 이제 그렇게 가게를 하고 있었는데 2014년 3월에 저희 그 LA 근처에 사는 스티브라는 사람이 저희 가게를 찾아와서 자기가 가게를 한번 해보겠다. 우리가 너무 힘들고 그러니까 자기가 가게를 해서 좀 살려보겠다. 이렇게 저희한테 제안을 했습니다.
So in 2014 March, somebody called Steve.
예, 스티브. 아니 모르는 사람.
Who I wasn't acquainted with. He offered that he would take over the store and make it profitable again.
그 사람이 저희 그 집 근처에 있는 교회 목사님이라서 그 사람을 믿고 가게를 그냥 맡겼습니다. 2014년 5월 1일서부터 제가 랜로드한테 말을 하지 않고 그 사람한테 가게를 맡기고 좀 가게를 살려봐라 이렇게 좀 부탁을 하고 그 사람이 목사기 때문에 굉장히 많이 믿고 가게를 그냥 맡기고 하라고 넘겨줬습니다.
So from 2014 May 1st on, I handed over the store to Steve, who was a pastor in the neighborhood. So I trusted him, and I didn't tell the renter, and regardless, and I trusted him that he would take over the store and manage it.
근데 그 사람이 가게를 하고 나서 3개월쯤 지나고 나서부터 렌트비, 가스, 알람, 전기 아무것도 돈을 안 내고 있었습니다.
But 3 months on, he stopped paying the rent, gas, and the fees for the alarm system.
그때부터 랜로드가 이제 저한테 에빅션 노티스 보내고 에디슨하고 가스 알람 회사에서 콜렉션 노티스가 저한테 오기 시작했습니다.
Then the renter started to go into process of eviction, and Edison started the collection process.
저는 랜로드한테 찾아가서 사정도 하고 매니지먼트 컴퍼니에 찾아가서 사정도 했는데 그쪽에서는 자기네는 렌트비하고 돈만 받으면 된다고 니네들이 알아서 해라 이렇게 말을 했었습니다.
So I went to the landlord and I plead and begged, and so he told me that as long as he gets the rent and the fees, the rest you two resolve it.
그리고 모레노밸리 경찰에 가서 그 무단으로 침입하지 못하는 그런 딱지를 받아서 제가 써서 붙여놓고 경찰한테 신고를 했는데 그 경찰이 2번이나 왔었는데 자기네가 할 일이 아니라고 둘이서 알아서 해결하라 그 경찰도 저희를 도와주지 않았습니다.
So I went to the police and got a restriction order, but they refused and told me that you two just resolve the issue.
또 변호사를 찾아가서 수를 하려고 했더니 변호사가 비용이 35,000불인데 돈을 먼저 내라고 해서 돈이 없어서 할 수가 없었습니다.
I hired a lawyer. He told me the fee is 35,000, and I didn't have the money, so I couldn't do that either.
그러고 몇 달 있다가 이 사람이 2014년 8월에 랜로드한테 렌트비를 다 주고 랜로드하고 CJ 스시라는 이름으로 계약을 해버렸습니다. 저도 모르게 했습니다.
So in 2014 August, he made a contract with the landlord. He paid all the fees and he reopened the store named TJ Sushi, and I didn't know anything about it.
죄송합니다. 제가 그렇게 가게를 뺏겼습니다.
So I lost the store.
그러고 나서 얼마 안 있었는데 BOE에서 텍스가 뭐 캐시하고 현찰하고 캐시하고 크레딧 카드하고 차이가 있다고 저한테 그 텍스 차지를 했습니다.
And then I was fined a tax fee, saying that cash and credit cards are different.
그래서 저는 너무 억울해서 BOE에 어필을 했고 2017년 5월에 1차 어필 컨퍼런스를 가졌습니다.
So I appealed, and in 2017 March I had the first meeting for the appeals.
왜냐하면 제가 가게를 뺏기고 나서 제 회사 주은잉크로 돼 있는 그 책임을 제가 있기 때문에 2014년도 3분기 세일즈 텍스하고 2014년도 4분기 세일즈 텍스를 제가 돈을 빌려서 내고 2015년 1월 달에 가게를 크로스했습니다. 2015년 1월 31일 날 크로스했습니다.
So I lost my store, but regardless, I had the responsibility for Jun Inc. So I paid the sales tax in 2013 and the tax for the fourth quarter in 2014, and then the store tax in 2015, January 31st.
그런데 BOE에서 2016년도에 그 캐시 크레딧 카드 비율을 맞춰가지고 그 근처에 있는 일식집들의 평균을 내서 저한테 청구를 했다고 이렇게 말을 했습니다. 그래서 저는 너무 억울해서 어필을 했고 2016년 5월에 한번 어필을 해서 조정을 6,500 얼마로 조정을 받았습니다.
So I got a statement from
BOE
VOE giving the estimate rate of use of cash and credit card based on the neighboring stores. And in 2017 March, I got a reduction for 6,550.
네, 그래서 그때 처음에 그 컨퍼런스 했을 때 그분들한테도 상당히 감사를 드렸습니다. 그분들이 저를 많이 제 사정을 알고 이렇게 조정을 해주셨는데 그 당시에 그 돈은 저에게 굉장히 큰 돈이었습니다. 텍스 6,000불 넘는 돈은 저한테 굉장히 큰 돈이었고 제가 빚도 굉장히 많이 지고 있었습니다. 지금도 그렇습니다.
So I am thankful for their consideration in lowering the debt at the conference. Still, I have a lot of debt, and the tax amount, 6,000 some, is still a large amount for me.
그래서 지금 BOE에서 저한테 청구한 게 2012년에서 2014년도 텍스를 정산해가지고 청구한 것입니다.
So what I'm charged from VOE is the tax from 2012 to 2014.
네, 근데 물론 제 잘못이지만 2014년도에 스티브라는 사람이 가게를 받아서 올류케인스로 바꾸고 나서 매상이 거의 한 2만 불 정도로 올랐습니다. 그러니까 그거를 기준으로 해서 텍스를 아마 레이스를 매긴 것 같습니다.
Although it was my mistake. I assume that this is reflected when Steve took over the store in 2014, and he changed the menu to all you can eat, and he gained 20,000 more income. So I think it's based on this.
그래서 제가 이 텍스 어필을 하게 됐고요. 1차적으로 한번 조정을 받았는데도 이건 너무 억울한 생각이 들어서 지금 또 2차 지금까지 하게 되는 겁니다.
So that's how I came to consider the tax appeal, and I feel it's unfair that I am charged so far.
사실 그때 장사할 때 저는 정말 제 최선을 다해서 했고, 제가 신분을 지키기 위해서 한국에서 돈을 빌려서 입금을 시키고 했는데 텍스를 더 매긴 거에 대해서 전 너무 당황하고 너무 억울한 생각이 들어서 이렇게 어필을 하게 됐습니다.
So to tell the truth, I did my best, and getting money from family and putting that money into the company, into the store, and deposited, and getting taxed on that. All this seems very surprising, very frustrating.
지금 저는 가게 뺏기고 텍스 나고 나서 식구들이 다 흩어졌습니다. 와이프하고 아들하고 저하고 따로따로 살고 있는데 지금 5년이 지나면서 좀 마음이 많이 치유가 됐습니다.
So after I lost the store, my wife and son is living together, and but after 5 years, I've come to terms with this.
지금은 저도 열심히 살면서 다시 가족들하고 살려고 노력하고 있습니다.
So I'm trying to live a good life and get back with my family.
제가 이거 텍스를 안 내려고 그러는 게 아니라 저도 돈이 있으면 다 내고 싶습니다. 다 내고 싶은데 지금 돈이 없으니까 좀 조정을 해달라 이렇게 부탁을 드리고 싶습니다.
I would pay the tax, but it's not that I'm not trying to not pay the tax, but I don't have the sufficient funds to pay it. So if you could consider this appeal, it would be appreciated.
제가 그때 가게를 그 사람한테 맡겼을 때도 그 사람도 물론 캐시를 받았을 거라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 제가 그 사람한테 캐시를 받으면 절대 갖고 있으면 안 된다고 입금을 하라고 제가 이렇게 사인도 받아놨었습니다. 그때 그 사람한테. 그래갖고 저도 그 사람이 장사할 때도 가서 캐시를 입금시키게끔 최선을 다해서 노력을 했고 제 나름대로 정말 열심히 살았습니다. 좀 잘 조정을 해주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
So when I gave him, when he took over the store, I told him that when you get cash, you need to deposit it, and I have proof that I tried that. So if you consider all the circumstances, I would be very appreciative.
네, 여러분들한테 많이 죄송스럽고 저도 이게 빨리 끝났으면 좋겠습니다. 저도 가슴에 이게 묻혀 있는 거를 빨리 버리고 싶고 빨리 끝내길 바랍니다.
So once again, I apologize, and I would like to resolve this issue as soon as possible.
네, 감사합니다. 이상입니다.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Kang. CDTFA, do you have any questions for Mr. Kang?
No, we don't.
Okay, if you're ready, you have 15 minutes to begin your presentation.
Okay. In this particular case, the appellant operated a restaurant that was audited for the period of April 2012 until they closed out the business or closed out the permit in December of 2014. Upon audit, the appellant did not provide profit and loss statements, sales journals, cash register tapes, guest checks, purchase journals, purchase invoices, or sales tax worksheets.
예전에 감사했을 때 보통 서류 감사나 캐시로 사용하는 증거나 인보이스나 사용 쓰는 그런 거를 전혀 보여주지 않았습니다.
보여준 게 아니라 없었습니다.
There was a difference in 2013 between the sales reported on the income tax returns and the sales and use tax returns of $36,000.
거기 그때 서류를 봤을 때 3,600불이라는 현금이 이렇게 안 맞았습니다. 차이가 있었습니다.
The markup of record for 2013 was 371%, and the markup for 2014 was 237%. We considered the amounts to be high and inconsistent.
여기서 감사할 때 신고치가 2013년에는 371 그리고 2014년에는 170불은 좀 이렇게 일치가 안 된다.
그걸 말씀드리죠.
The amounts received by credit card were higher than the total sales reported on the sales and use tax returns.
크레딧 카드 가격이 더 높았다고 사용했을 때.
무슨 말?
Therefore, the department decided to use an alternative method to establish the audit liability.
그래서 차이가 있기 때문에 다른 방법으로 감사를 하게 했습니다.
Since the business was closed out and there was a dispute between the person managing the business and the appellant, we were unable to conduct a observation test.
그때 감사를 완전히 하지 못했어요. 관리하는 사람 주인이 달랐기 때문에 완전하게 감사를 못했어요.
Therefore, initially, we used the credit card percentage from two similar businesses in the area, which was just over 44% to establish the audit liability.
그래서 주변에 있는 가게들의 신용카드 사용 퍼센티지를 사용해가지고 보니까 44% 정도 증가했던 걸 봐서 그걸 기준으로 선택해서 감사했습니다.
Subsequent to that, the department arbitrarily used a 80% credit card percentage to establish the liability, which reduced the amount of taxable sales substantially.
그래서 그 사무국은 80%의 기준에서 감사를 한 결과 세금이 줄어들었다고.
Due to the lack of records and the business being closed, it was determined that the credit card percentage was the best method to use to establish the audit liability.
그래서 세금 감사할 때 기록도 없고 가게도 닫았기 때문에 신용카드의 퍼센티지를 따라서 감사할 수밖에 없었다.
I would point out that profitability of the business or capital put into the business has no relationship to the, necessarily doesn't have a relationship with the amount of sales that are being made.
판매하는 그 양하고 그다음에 자금을 그 가게에 넣는 관계가 없다. 판매하는 거에 관해서 관계가 없다.
With that, the department concludes their presentation.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Lambert. At this time, I'd like to ask my panel members if they have questions for either of the parties. Judge Cho?
I have a couple quick questions for the department. According to the decision, it said that the business transferred sometime in June of 2014. Is that correct?
I believe at that point that the person that the appellant was talking about started operating the business. The department was not notified until December of 2014 that the appellant was no longer operating the business, so the appellant was aware that this other person was filing the returns under his permit, therefore the appellant would be responsible for returns for that period of time, because when we first knew about it was in December of 2014.
2014년 12월에 가게 그렇게 됐다고 공지를 사법에서 받았기 때문에 그 전에 그 반려신혼분이 선생님 본인의 그 가게 허가를 받고 모든 거를 관리하고 있었기 때문에 이 기간 전까지는 홍보되기 전까지는 책임이 있으셨다고 말씀하세요.
So I just wanted to confirm that the department is using the credit card ratio of 80% based off of credit card deposits for the entire audit period. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So with respect to the third quarter of 2014 and fourth quarter of 2014, those credit card deposits, do you know where that information came from? Because if you transferred the business to somebody else, would those credit card deposits still be going to him, or is that the new business?
Well, I believe they showed up under his account. That's where we obtained the information.
Okay, so the credit card deposits for the third quarter of 2014 and the fourth quarter of 2014 were actually credit card deposits to Mr. Kang's
That's
account.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just a follow-up question, is that based on bank statements that you received from them?
No.
Those credit card deposits?
It's the 1099K
Okay,
information.
Those 1099Ks were issued to Mr. King?
That's correct. We maintain a database of that, and so the department maintains a database, and so that's where we obtain that information from.
With respect to the predecessor liability, or just the fact that Mr. King is responsible for tax payments even when, after he supposedly transferred the business, one of the requirements is that he was aware that the new owner was using his seller's permit. How do you come to that conclusion that he knew?
That's a good question, and you're gonna, I'm gonna need to, it's in the exhibits, and there's a comment in that regard, and I'm gonna, it is the appellant acknowledged that he was aware that the taxpayer was filing the returns under his permit. He stated he stated that to us verbally. It is in the exhibits, but I would have to go through here to find out where it is in the exhibits.
Maybe a question for the appellant. Were you aware that this person, Steve, was using your seller's permit and filing sales tax returns based on 주유니?
그 스티브가 그 선생님의 그 사용자 허가를 가지고 판매의 모든 거를 준 잉크의 그 가게 이름으로 내고 있는 걸 알고 계셨어요?
그게
So, sorry, just to clarify, this is after the business was reportedly sold in June of 2014.
가게를 파신 거 이후에 2014년 이후에 그거를 하셨어요?
그게 말이에요? 가게를 제가 그 사람한테 판 게 아닙니다. 판 게 아니고요. 이제 이 사람이 그 목사님이 죄송합니다. 그분이 이제 제가 장사가 안 되고 있으니 우리 가게로 와서 내가 대신 네 대신 가게를 해줄 테니까 나한테 가게를 맡겨라. 그럼 내가 몇 해가지고 가게를 키운 다음에 주겠다. 이렇게 얘기를 한 거예요, 저희한테. 그래서 그 원래 랜로드하고 저하고 주은잉크랑 이렇게 계약이 돼 있는데 제가 그분한테 그러면 목사님 이걸 잘 해달라 그러고 맡긴 거예요, 그냥. 그 사람하고 계약을 그 사람하고 랜로드하고 계약된 게 아니라 그냥 제가 맡긴 거니까 제 주은잉크 이름으로 그 사람이 장사를 했죠. 그리고 돈은 자기가 다 가져간 거죠. 그러니까 저는 이제 그 렌트비도 잘 내고 뭐 전기세도 잘 내고 이럴 줄 알고 있었는데 처음엔 잘 냈어요. 3개월 동안은. 그러다가 3개월 지나고 나니까 그런 걸 아무것도 안 내고 있었던 거예요. 그러니까 이제 그게 전부 주인은 그 랜로드는 저한테 에디슨을 보내는 거고 전기 에디슨하고 가스회사도 주은잉크로 콜렉션이 막 들어오는 거죠.
So I didn't actually sell the store. Steve proposed that he would run the store for me, and he would so during that time, so Steve has no contract with the landlord. He was running the business under Jun Inc. and he took the money that he earned. The first 3 months was okay, but after the 3 months, he didn't pay the rent and the utilities. So I got the eviction note under the Jun Inc. name from the landlord.
Sorry, do you mind if I just interrupt really quickly? What time frame was that?
이게 모든 게 언제 일어났죠?
2014년 5월 1일자로 시작이 됐습니다.
From 2014 May 1st.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, were you finished with the translation? That wasn't clear.
Mr. Kang said that he didn't sell the store to Steve. He asked him to run it for him. And so Steve hadn't like a direct contract with the landlord.
Oh,
So he was just running the store on behalf of him, and he didn't sell the store to Steve.
At what point was it your understanding that Steve had taken over the business and was cutting him out, that he was no longer in the picture? Or when Steve had basically fully taken the business as his own?
스티브가 자기 그 사업처럼 모든 걸 이렇게 가져가고 운영하는 시점이 언제가요?
그게 2014년 5월 1일부터 시작했습니다.
So all this started from May 1st on, 2014 May 1st on. Everything after that date.
And the point in time when Steve made the deal with the landlord, paid all the fees, and started operating as the other sushi restaurant, TJ Sushi, I think? when was that?
TJ 수시 가게를 자기 가게 상호 바꾸고 운영한 시간이 언젠가요?
그건 저도 정확히 모르겠습니다. 언젠가. 저도 정확히는 모르겠는데요. 하여튼 몇 달 그거를 렌트비 안 내고 있다가 그 렌트비를 가지고 매니지먼트 컴퍼니 가서 내가 낼게, 나랑 계약하자. 이러니까 매니지먼트 컴퍼니에서 그거를 돈을 받고 계약을 했다 그러더라고요. 근데 그게 아마 8월 달쯤 된 거, 8월 달쯤이었, 2014년 8월 달쯤이었을 것 같아요. 8월, 9월, something. 아니다. 아니야, 8월, 9월 정도 된 것 같아요. 8, 9, 10월. 하여튼 저 정확하게 그거는 잘 모르겠어요.
I don't remember exactly, but it would be around September, August, September 2014.
Thank you.
I just have one question for Mr. King. If you could please explain to me what you believe that your percentage of credit card sales was from the 2012 to the 2014 period.
2012년부터 2014년까지 신용카드 사용 금액이 얼마인지
저희 그 가게 매상의 거의 99%가 그 카드 대금이었는데요. 한 달에 한 5,000불에서 6,000불 정도가 될 거였습니다. 그리고 아까 그 말씀하신 것 중에서 돈이 좀 틀렸다는 거는 뭐냐면, 제가 한국에서 돈을 빌려다가 캐시를 한 달에 2,000불에서 1,500불 사이를 캐시를 은행에다 넣었어. 어카운트에다가 넣었다가 그러니까 CPA한테 준 거죠. CPA한테 신고하고 CPA가 이제 넣어서 이제 제가 이투 비자를 받아야 되니까 매달 얼만큼 이상은 해야지 이투 비자가 연장이 된다. 이런 식으로 말을 하니까 그거를 1,500불, 2,000불씩 넣었다가 그 다음 달 되면 넣었다가 한 일주일 되면 또 빼서 우리가 써야 되니까 돈이 없으니까 또 그 돈을 빼서 쓰고 또 2,000불 넣었다가 또 빼서 쓰고 아마 그래서 좀 차이가 있었을 겁니다. 제 생각은 그렇습니다.
So 2012 to 2014, the sales, 99% was from credit cards, and it's around $5,000 to $6,000. And I also gave $1,500 to $2,000 to my CPA, and he deposited that money because of my E2 status. And then after a while, I needed that money. I took it out, I used it, and then I deposited, and then I deposited again. That would be the answer why there is discrepancy from the office.
Thank you. Panel members, did you have any further questions?
No, thanks.
No further questions.
Mr. King, you have 5 minutes on rebuttal.
감사합니다. 하여튼 저도 그 BOE에서 하시는 거는 이해를 합니다. 근데 저도 좀 텍스를 많이 내고 살고 싶어요. 사실은 나중에 연금도 좀 많이 받고 살면 좋은데, 일단 제가 지금 상황이 좀 이러니까 어렵고 좀 힘드니까, 만약에 이게 텍스가 지금 정해져 있는 게 안 될 것 같으면 좀 이렇게 조정을 더 해주셨으면 제가 할 수 있는 만큼 저도 내고 싶습니다. 사실은. 그러니까 제가 안 내려고 막 그러는 것도 아니고, 지금 저도 우리 가족하고 살려고 열심히 살아가고 있는데 좋은 날이 올 거라 믿고서 저도 희망을 갖고 살고 있습니다. 그러니까 좀 조정을 좀 해주시면 제가 낼 수 있는 만큼 열심히 해서 내겠습니다. 이상입니다.
Thank you very much for listening. I fully understand this issue, and I truly want to pay tax and get pensions later on. It's not that I don't want to pay the tax. I still working hard to get back to my family, and if you could adjust the tax amount, then I would work hard and pay what I can coming in the future.
Thank you. CDTFA, do you have anything further you'd like to add?
The only thing I would point you to in the question in regards to when they started, or he knew that, the appellant knew that the taxpayer, that the person operating the business started in May 2014, was in their petition in, on its page 59, and it states, due to some complication, this is the appellant's writing, due to some complications at that time, TJ Sushi used Yu Young's seller's permit and promised to file the sales tax returns and pay the related sales tax for income earned from May 1st, 2014 until they obtained their own seller's permit. Says Ju Young completely trusted TJ Sushi to carry out its promise. So the one thing I would point out is when TJ Sushi came in to obtain their own permit, at that time in December of 2014 is when this permit was closed out and the new permit was issued to TJ Sushi. So that's the only thing I had to add.
Thank you everyone for coming today and making your presentations. The record in this matter is now closed and this appeal is submitted for decision. The panel of judges will meet and deliberate, and we intend to issue a written decision within 100 days. Thank you. This hearing is now adjourned.
감사합니다.
Thank you.